I installed the basketball hoop for my kids. Then the HOA sent a violation notice that pushed me to expose a loophole they never saw coming. The basketball hoop went up on a Saturday morning. No ceremony. No announcement. Just me, a ladder, and my kids standing in the driveway, bouncing the ball impatiently while I tightened the last bolt. The sun was barely over the rooftops, the air cool, the kind of morning that makes you feel like you're doing something right. My son took the first shot. It hit the backboard, bounced off the rim, and dropped clean through the net. They cheered like they'd just won the finals. That joy lasted exactly 48 hours. On Monday afternoon, a white envelope appeared taped to my front door. No knock. No conversation. Just the HOA logo stamped on the corner like a warning label. Violation notice. I already knew what it was about. According to the letter, basketball hoops were now prohibited structures, citing a rule that had supposedly been clarified at the last board meeting. Any hoop visible from the street was considered an eyesore, a noise concern, and, my personal favorite, a threat to community uniformity. I read it twice, then a third time. There it was in black and white. Remove the hoop within 72 hours or face daily fines. I laughed at first. Actually laughed. Out loud. Because this wasn't about safety. Or noise. Or aesthetics. This was about control. The HOA president, same guy who once fined a neighbor for leaving his trash can out 10 minutes late, lived directly across the street. He'd watched my kids play all weekend. I'd seen him standing on his porch, arms crossed, expression sour, like happiness itself was violating a bylaw. I walked outside and looked at the hoop. Perfectly centered. Not blocking anything. Not damaged. Not dangerous. Just kids playing. That evening, I replied to the violation email asking for the specific bylaw number. Not a summary. Not a paraphrase. The actual rule as written, when it was passed, and who voted for it. The response came fast. Too fast. A single sentence. The board has authority to interpret existing rules as needed. That's HOA language for because we said so. I went digging. I pulled the governing documents, the amendments, the meeting minutes going back years. I read them like a contract dispute, highlighter in hand. Somewhere between page 47 and 48, I found it. Clause no one ever talked about. It stated that HOA authority applied only to private property not designated for public access. Roads, sidewalks, and easements classified as public were explicitly excluded. And that's when I noticed something I'd never really thought about before. My driveway. When the neighborhood was built, several homeowners, including the original owner of my house, had signed an agreement allowing their driveways to be used as temporary public access during construction. Most people revoked it later. Mine never had. Legally, my driveway was still classified as a public access easement, which meant one thing very clearly. The HOA had no jurisdiction over it. The next morning, I emailed the board again. Polite. Calm. Attached screenshots of their own documents with the relevant section highlighted. I asked a simple question. Can you confirm whether the HOA claims authority over publicly designated access easements? There was no reply. Not that day. Not the next. On day 3, another notice appeared on my door. This one more aggressive. Higher fines. Final warning. That's when I stopped trying to reason with them. If my driveway was public access, then I'd treat it like one. I printed flyers. 3-on-3 driveway tournament. Saturday at noon. All welcome. I didn't post them everywhere. Just enough. A few doors down. A couple of parents at school pickup. One went up on the community board outside the clubhouse. The HOA president saw it within hours. He marched across the street like he was storming a battlefield. You can't do this, he snapped, jabbing a finger toward the hoop. Do what? I asked calmly. Host events. Encourage people. This isn't a park. I handed him a copy of the property classification. He didn't even look at it. This will have consequences, he said. I smiled. So will trying to enforce rules you don't legally control. Saturday came fast. By noon, there were cars lining the street. Kids dribbling. Parents laughing. Someone brought a cooler. Someone else brought a whistle. Music played softly from a speaker. The HOA president stood at the edge of his lawn, phone glued to his ear, watching something he couldn't stop. 3-on-3. Laughter. Sneakers squeaking on concrete. For the first time since moving in, the neighborhood felt alive. And the HOA had just made a huge mistake. Because they didn't just ban a basketball hoop. They gave me a reason to read the fine print. And once you do that, the power dynamic changes forever. By Monday morning, the HOA realized I wasn't bluffing. My inbox filled with emails marked urgent. The tone had shifted overnight, from authoritative to frantic. They weren't citing bylaws anymore. They were requesting cooperation, seeking clarification, and my personal favorite, hoping to resolve this amicably. Funny how quickly the language changes when the power slips. The first email claimed the tournament violated community safety standards. I replied with a single sentence asking them to identify which standard applied to public access easements. No response. The second email warned of fines for organized events. I attached a screenshot of the county classification showing my driveway's designation and asked again, politely, how HOA fines could be applied to property they didn't govern. That one stayed unanswered too. Instead, they tried a different tactic. On Tuesday afternoon, 2 HOA board members showed up at my door. Not the president this time, he'd gone quiet. These were the quieter ones. The ones who usually nodded along at meetings. They smiled too much. We're just concerned this is getting out of hand, one of them said, glancing past me at the hoop like it had personally offended him. I'm not doing anything illegal, I replied. Are you? That question ended the visit. Word spread faster than I expected. Parents started stopping me on walks, lowering their voices like they were sharing classified information. Is it true the HOA can't touch your driveway? Could we do that too? Why did no one ever tell us this? Because HOAs thrive on one thing above all else: people not reading. By Thursday, something strange happened. The violation notices stopped. No more emails. No more warnings. Just silence. That's when I knew they were scrambling behind closed doors. Saturday's second tournament was bigger. Someone brought folding chairs. Another family brought popsicles. A teenager set up a whiteboard with a bracket drawn in dry erase marker. The hoop echoed with the sound of clean shots and groans over missed layups. The driveway had become neutral ground, and it was driving the HOA insane. I caught the president watching from his window, phone in hand, pacing. At one point, a patrol car cruised slowly past the house. Didn't stop. Didn't even roll down the window. Public road. Public access. Nothing to enforce. That night, the HOA sent out a neighborhood-wide email. Subject line: Community reminder regarding recreational equipment. It was vague. Carefully worded. No names mentioned. No threats. Just a gentle reminder about shared harmony and respecting established guidelines. What it didn't say was louder than what it did. They couldn't stop it. The following week, the board announced an emergency meeting. Attendance tripled. People who'd never shown up before filled the room, arms crossed, documents printed, questions ready. The president tried to take control, but for the first time since I'd lived there, he didn't own the room. Someone asked about the driveway easement. Another asked why this had never been disclosed. A third asked how many other rules were really just interpretations no one had challenged. The answers were messy, defensive, inconsistent. That was the moment the illusion cracked. By the end of the meeting, the board agreed to review enforcement authority with legal counsel. Translation: they were terrified of getting sued. 2 weeks later, the basketball hoop was no longer banned. Not officially reinstated, just quietly removed from the prohibited list, like it had never been a problem in the first place. No apology. No acknowledgement. But I didn't need one. Because something far more important had happened. People stopped being afraid. Kids played outside again. Neighbors questioned notices instead of complying automatically. Someone even asked for copies of the governing documents at the next meeting, and actually read them. As for my driveway, it stayed open. Every Saturday afternoon there was a game. Sometimes organized, sometimes not. Sometimes just my kids shooting around while neighbors leaned on the fence, talking, laughing, existing like a community instead of a compliance zone. The HOA president eventually stopped watching. Not because he didn't care, but because he finally understood something he never had before. Rules only work when people believe they're absolute. And once you prove they aren't, you don't just win an argument. You change the balance of power. The email arrived at 6:12 a.m., which told me everything I needed to know about the kind of day the HOA president was planning to have. Immediate violation notice, recreational equipment. I read it twice, standing in my kitchen with a mug of coffee cooling in my hand. According to the message, my driveway basketball hoop, portable, regulation height, neatly positioned well within my property line, was now considered a visual nuisance and a safety hazard. Effective immediately, I was required to remove it or face daily fines. What made it surreal wasn't the rule itself. HOAs love rules. What made it surreal was the timing. The hoop had been there for 3 years. No complaints, no warnings, no issues. Kids from the block played pickup games every weekend. Parents chatted on folding chairs. Cars still passed without trouble. Then, 2 weeks earlier, I'd voted against the HOA president's proposal to raise monthly fees for landscaping enhancements that nobody asked for. And now, suddenly, the hoop was a problem. By 8 a.m., I had 3 texts from neighbors asking if the email was real. By 9, 2 kids were already shooting around, blissfully unaware that their layups had apparently violated subsection 14.3 c of the bylaws. At 10:30, the HOA president herself pulled up in a white SUV and parked directly across from my driveway. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stood there with her arms crossed, sunglasses on, watching the game like it personally offended her. I walked outside. "You got my email," she said before I could speak. "I did," I replied. "I'm still trying to find the part where it applies retroactively." She tilted her head. "It's about uniformity." The kids stopped playing. The ball rolled to a gentle stop against my garage door. "Uniformity," I repeated. "So, no hoops anywhere?" She hesitated. Just for a second. "Well," she said, "some people were approved years ago." I looked past her. 3 houses down, a rusted hoop leaned at a crooked angle over a cracked driveway. "So this is selective," I said. Her jaw tightened. "This is enforcement." That was the moment I realized arguing wasn't going to do anything. She wanted compliance, not conversation. And she was used to getting it. That afternoon, I read the bylaws. All of them. Not the summary. Not the FAQ. The full, dry, 94-page document nobody ever bothered to open. And buried deep inside was a section titled Public Right-of-Way and Easements. It took me an hour to understand what I was reading. Another hour to confirm it with county records. Then I smiled. My driveway, because of a decades-old planning decision made before the HOA even existed, sat partially on a public access easement. Maintained by me. Owned by me. But legally classified, in very specific language, as a roadway accessible to the public. Which meant one beautiful thing. The HOA had no authority over recreational activities conducted on it. The next Saturday, I took the hoop down. The president drove by slowly, satisfied. Then, an hour later, I put it back up. Not as a private driveway hoop, but as a public-use basketball court. I chalked clear boundary lines. Set up a small, temporary sign at the edge of the driveway. Not for decoration, not for intimidation, just factual. Community pickup game, open play. By noon, kids from outside the neighborhood showed up. By 1, parents did too. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker. Someone else brought cones. A group of teens organized a clean 3-on-3 rotation. No blocking traffic. No trash. No chaos. Just basketball. At 1:47 p.m., the HOA president returned, this time with a printed copy of the violation notice in her hand. She stopped when she saw the crowd. She walked up to me, lowered her voice, and said, "This is not what the rules intended." I nodded. "But it's what they allow." Her eyes flicked to the chalk lines. The sign. "The kids laughing behind us." "You're doing this on purpose," she said. "Yes," I replied calmly. "And legally." She stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the exact kind of community event the HOA claimed to promote on its website, but clearly never wanted to happen without permission. "This isn't over," she said. I smiled again. "I know," I said. "The game just started." By Saturday afternoon, my driveway didn't look like part of an HOA anymore. It looked like a block party that accidentally became a protest. 3 portable hoops lined the edge of the asphalt, their black bases filled with water and wedged perfectly within the boundary markers my lawyer had helped me spray paint the night before. The public road designation was still fresh, barely 48 hours old, but legally sound. The county clerk had even laughed when I explained why I was filing it. "Basketball," she'd said. "That's a new one." Kids started showing up first. Teenagers from 2 streets over, dribbling balls with the casual confidence of people who had nothing to lose. Then came parents, folding chairs, coolers, phones already out. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker. Someone else brought a referee whistle, though nobody remembered inviting a ref. By the time the first 3-on-3 game tipped off, there were at least 30 people standing on what used to be my private driveway. And then the HOA president arrived. Linda didn't come alone. She never did when she thought she was right. 2 board members flanked her like nervous interns, clipboards clutched to their chests. She stopped at the edge of the asphalt, heels sinking slightly into the gravel, eyes scanning the scene as if it physically offended her. Her face did something strange, like it couldn't decide whether to be furious or afraid. "What is this?" she demanded, loud enough for the game to pause mid-dribble. I stepped forward calmly, hands in my pockets. "Community recreation." "This is private property," she snapped. "No," I said, smiling. "It was." One of the kids laughed. Linda's head snapped toward him like a hawk spotting prey. "You can't just decide." "I didn't," I cut in. "The county did. Filed, approved, recorded. Want the document number?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down at her clipboard like it might save her. "This violates HOA code," she tried again, weaker now. "There is no HOA code," I said louder. "Not here." Phones were recording. Linda noticed. Her posture stiffened. "This is unsafe," she said. "Liability alone." "Covered," I replied. "County maintained public access road. Recreational use statute applies." One of the board members leaned toward her, whispered something. She shook her head sharply, refusing to listen. "I am ordering you to shut this down," Linda said, pointing at the hoops. I didn't move. Instead, I looked past her, to the parents, the kids, the neighbors who'd quietly dealt with fines and warnings and passive-aggressive letters for years. "Games to 11, I called out. "Check ball." The bounce of rubber on asphalt echoed like a gunshot. Linda's face went red, then pale, then red again. "This isn't over," she hissed, stepping back. "You've made a very big mistake." She turned and walked away, heels clicking faster than before. I knew she was right about one thing. It wasn't over. Monday morning, the letters came. Not 1. Not 2. 7. Cease and desist notices slid into mailboxes like threats wrapped in stationery. Claims of obstruction. Noise complaints. Unauthorized gathering. One even accused me of operating an unlicensed sports facility. That one made my lawyer laugh out loud. By Wednesday, the county inspector showed up. He was younger than I expected, wearing sunglasses and holding a tablet. He watched a game in progress for a full minute before speaking. "Looks fun," he said. "Want to play?" one of the kids asked. He smiled. "I'm working." Linda appeared again, practically materializing from anger alone. "This is the man," she said sharply. "He's abusing a legal loophole." The inspector nodded slowly. "Sir, are you blocking access to the road?" "No," I said. "Public access is open." "Any permanent structures?" "Nope." "Charging money?" "Not a cent." He tapped his tablet. Looked at Linda. "I don't see a violation." Her mouth fell open. "But this is harassment," she insisted. "He's doing this to spite us." The inspector shrugged. "Intent isn't illegal." He turned to me. "Just keep emergency access clear. Always do." When he left, Linda stood frozen, staring at the hoops like they'd personally betrayed her. That night the games ran late. Under porch lights and street lamps, laughter echoed through a neighborhood that had forgotten what it sounded like. And somewhere behind her closed blinds, I knew Linda was planning her next move. Because people like her never lose quietly. They just escalate. By Saturday morning, my driveway didn't look like a driveway anymore. It looked like a festival staging area. Orange cones lined the edge where my asphalt met the HOA's precious private road. Folding tables held coolers of water, Gatorade, and snack. A laminated sign, posted outside my property line, simply read, "Community 3-on-3 Tournament. All welcome." I stood at the end of my driveway, coffee in hand, watching my kids warm up. The hoop stood tall at the edge of the asphalt, perfectly positioned so the pole and base were entirely on what the county map now labeled as a public access easement. The ball slapped against the backboard with a sound that felt like justice. At 9:07 a.m., the HOA president arrived. Linda's SUV screeched to a stop like she'd slammed the brakes with her soul. She got out wearing oversized sunglasses and a blazer that screamed authority cosplay. Behind her, 2 board members trailed like nervous interns. "You can't do this," she said, before she even reached me. I took a slow sip of coffee. "Good morning, Linda." "This is an unauthorized gathering," she snapped. "You're violating multiple bylaws." I gestured down at the painted line where my property ended. "Everything past that line is no longer under HOA jurisdiction." She scoffed. "That's not how this works." "That's exactly how it works," I said, pulling out my phone. One tap brought up the county clerk's email. Another showed the recorded dedication. My driveway extension is now a public road. Temporary, but legally valid. Anyone can use it. Her jaw tightened. "You can't just donate a road." "I can," I said. And I did. A few neighbors had gathered by then, phones out, pretending not to listen while very obviously listening. One of the board members whispered something to Linda. She waved him off. "This is a safety hazard," she said loudly. "Children playing in the street?" I smiled. "That's why I hired a permit-approved event marshal." I pointed to my friend Marcus, wearing a neon vest and holding a clipboard. "Retired traffic officer. Volunteering today." Right on cue, a county patrol car rolled slowly past, the officer inside giving Marcus a casual nod. Linda's confidence cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but I saw it. At 9:15, the first game tipped off. The sound of laughter echoed through the cul-de-sac. Sneakers squeaked. Parents cheered. Someone played music softly from a portable speaker. It felt alive. Like the neighborhood used to before rules replaced people. Linda made a call. Then another. She paced. She pointed. She argued with a man on speakerphone who clearly wasn't agreeing with her. At 9:42, she marched back over to me. "You're enjoying this," she said. "I'm enjoying my kids," I replied. "And my neighbors." She leaned in. "You think this makes you clever." "I think it makes the rules fair," I said. "Or at least, optional." Her phone buzzed. She answered, listened, then went very still. "Yes," she said quietly. "I understand." She hung up and looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "The HOA attorney says," she began, choosing each word carefully, "that as long as the easement stands, enforcement would expose us to liability." I nodded. "That's what mine said too." "You hired an attorney?" "I read the bylaws," I corrected. She stared at the hoop, at the kids, at the neighbors laughing together on my asphalt. "This isn't over," she said. I shrugged. "The tournament ends at 5. She left without another word. By noon, every bracket slot was full. Even people who never talked to each other were teaming up. Someone brought a grill. Someone else brought shade tents. It stopped feeling like defiance and started feeling like community. When my youngest hit a clean three-pointer, the whole street erupted. I realized then that this was bigger than a basketball hoop. It was about reminding the HOA and ourselves that neighborhoods are for people, not paperwork. At 4:58 p.m., we handed out cheap medals and took a group photo. At 5:01, I removed the cones. The easement expired at midnight. On Monday, the HOA quietly revised the sports equipment rule to allow temporary hoops during daylight hours. They never mentioned the tournament. But every time a ball thumps against the pavement now, I see Linda's face at 9:07 a.m., and I smile.